Greetings, A24 fans. Welcome to A24 on the Rocks. My name's Eric, and if you haven't listened to us before, this is a podcast where we review every single A24 movie in chronological order of distribution while drinking and sometimes being drunk. As is tradition, we start out every podcast sharing our drink of choice for the night, and so, due to the name of this film, I will let the woman walk ahead and introduce herself first. Kelly, what are you drinking?
Hi, audience. This is Kelly. I'm drinking red Zinfandel wine, and that's all I got to say about that. Now that I'm finished walking ahead, Kevin, why don't you follow up?
All right, this is man walking behind. I'm drinking Whistle Pig Rye whiskey tonight. It's a 6-year rye. Whistle Pig is delicious. It's a really affordable bottle, and rye whiskey is my favorite kind of whiskey. So we're going to keep drinking that. I'm drinking it neat out of a Glencairn glass because I'm bougie, I guess, or I just like good-tasting whiskey, I suppose. But this is the second time we've watched a Western, and I have not remembered that I have a Western-inspired bourbon, and I've left it on my shelf.
Yes.
Where's Cole when you need him? He would have been all over this. But
I mean, I'm drinking a Jefferson's Reserve. That's
fair.
it's Kentucky, so that's not Western, right? Yeah. But, yeah, either way. It's a very old batch.
Whiskey.
I'm Eric, by the way, your host for the night. And if you're a frequent listener of this program, sadly, Cole will be out the next 2 episodes because his work scheduled him for night shifts the next couple of weeks to finish a project. But don't you worry, our big red teddy bear will be back after that. Tonight we're reviewing the third Western in the A24 chronology, the 2018 historical drama film Woman Walks Ahead, starring Jessica Chastain, Michael Greyeyes, and Sam Rockwell. This film premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 10th, 2017, then was distributed by A24 for limited theatrical release on June 29th, 2018. This film tries to portray the true story of a Brooklyn-based painter named Catherine Weldon, who traveled all the way to the Dakotas in 1890 to paint the famous indigenous chief Sitting Bull. Catherine Weldon is portrayed by Academy Award-winning actor and A24 alumni Jessica Chastain. So I'd say this film was very much carried by its characters. I wouldn't go as far as to call it a character study, but I'd say that we're very centered around the characters and how they react to the times they're in. So I'll start out by asking Kelly, this film portrays Catherine Weldon as recently bereaved, although that's not historically accurate, but it starts out with her throwing her late husband's portrait over a bridge in New York. So, Kelly, what did you think of Catherine Weldon when we first met her?
I feel like we don't have a lot of backstory on her. Not that we needed it, but like you said, the first thing we see is the fact that she grieved for a year, and then she wakes up one day and goes, I'm not wearing black anymore, I'm done mourning. And also, here's me reading this letter about my intentions, and I'm done crying, so grief over. Time to move on with life. And it's very clear that that's not a usual thing to do for a woman. And it's also made clear that, like, she comes from money, she's well connected, so that's the only reasons that she has to be able to do any of that kind of stuff. Otherwise, her character seems extremely naive, which I guess she would be, right? But I feel like the real life woman that she's based on wouldn't be so naive, I would hope. But it just kind of is a bit cringy, is how I took her. Both in the beginning and kind of remained throughout the movie.
Kevin, what did you think of Catherine when we first met her?
It felt a little forced, a little trope-esque, like strong female lead going out and not listening to anybody as she's on a train. I know it's a really weird comparison, but it reminded me of the Jane character in Tarzan. Lady going out
costuming.
The costuming and just kind
and
of
the
her
sweat stains on the dress.
And just kind of her ability to just, kind of, you can't tell me what to do, I'm going to walk on and be strong and willed. And it wasn't poorly done by any stretch of the imagination. And of course, Jessica Chastain, I think, did a fine job with the role. And when you're introduced, I think it's important that you kind of get that intention from her character right out of the way. If you're going to follow her through making poor decisions about her health and safety, at least you have a reason why, I suppose. And they do that. They lay it out pretty quickly. Her first interaction with Sam Rockwell's character in the carriage does a pretty good job of establishing her as this, I'm not going to take your crap type of character. And I think that they kind of used that as a very effective launching point for the next couple of scenes, maybe not for her whole character, but it set it up pretty quickly, and it gave me enough to run with.
Mm-hmm. So the true story of Catherine Weldon up to this point, she actually was from Switzerland, and she immigrated to America in 1852, married a man named Bernard Schlatter. Then she ran away with a married man named Christopher Stevenson to New Jersey, and they eventually broke up after, obviously, she ran away with another man. I think she ran away with him in 1876 or 1877, and then she was divorced by Bernard Schlatter after Christopher Stevenson also broke up with her, and she was divorced by him in 1883, so her actual husband never actually died, but they decided to skew that for the film, which is interesting. Anyway, I'd say a big part of this film is Catherine Weldon's position as a woman in the late 19th century. After she tells us that she's a painter, she says she wants to paint American Indians after seeing George Catlin paintings because, quote, it was the freedom that struck me. Even inside the paintings, the people were free. Kelly, have you ever heard of George Catlin before? Or
No, I have not.
No? Yeah, I never heard of him before this film either.
Nope, me either.
I guess he does, a lot of landscape paintings, and he was painting a lot of Native Americans in the late 19th century. So she then gets on a train, as Kevin said, and travels west, where she realizes she's on a train of all men who are all ogling at her, and Sam Rockwell's character, Colonel Silas Grove, greets her and says, "Not many ladies travel past Omaha." Kevin, what did you think of this scene and how it portrayed women in America in the late 19th century?
Yeah, I touched on it a little earlier, but it was effective for me in the sense that Kelly nailed it when she said there was naivety, right? That she felt very naive, and I think that even in going into that, even to that conversation, she felt that kind of, I don't really know what's going to happen, but we're going to just see what the world has got to wait for us. Interacting with Sam Rockwell's character was definitely some great dialogue, at least for me. There was probably some parts where they could have done a little bit better, but they showed the ogling part, right, where they all turn around and look as she goes up the carriage. I thought that was a good shot, kind of just showing how completely, utterly alone she is in that world. And they definitely didn't shy away from that. And I know we're going scene by scene, so you'll get to it. And it's cool the way that they kind of introduce these two characters to each other right off the bat. So yeah.
Kelly, what did you think of how they portrayed women in North America in the late 19th century?
Yeah, well, we don't have a depiction of women in general. We just have her. But I don't know. I feel like the costuming was really, really well done, especially like in that scene, but also throughout. I also think that the train itself was really, like, it looked really high budget and nice, and also her bunk itself looked really cozy, and I appreciated all of those, like, little pieces, because it's not like the train lasts that long in the movie, but it does set you up as a vehicle for the rest of the scenery and location for the film. So I appreciated all that, and yeah, of course, her being unaccompanied by a guy. It's interesting, one, that they made the choice not to show any other woman on the train, not even as a wife or like traveling or anything, because it kind of shows the like intention, the fact that there's a lot of single men traveling out there unaccompanied by anyone. They might behave a little bit differently if there were women on the train as well, and they seem kind of surprised that there is one on the train. And then it becomes like, I'm playing too many video games, but Sam Rockwell and her conversation felt like a dialogue tree, where to me she kept picking all the wrong answers and like making things worse and like scarier for herself. So the other thing I'll say too is with Sam Rockwell, and I've said this before, he's just, him as an actor is like a can do no wrong actor. So even though his character I know is supposed to be like a brute and like kind of a creep and all of this kind of like very like shady and like move in to make things happen, has done awful things in the past. Even him having that interaction with her and being very upfront rude to her, I was like, aw, how charming. So if it was a different actor, I'd feel different about the scene. But I think they played to both of their strengths as actors for their little interaction there.
Sure. And yeah, like, Kevin, you're a big fan of Slow West, and that's a previous A24 film. How do you think this film, like, kind of portrayed the Old West in a way? Like, it was the 1890s, but it still was trying to portray somewhat of the Old West. And I also think of the Ballad of Lefty Brown. It tried to, portray Montana. I think that was the late 1800s, right? So what did you think of how this film portrayed the Old West?
Without having actually lived in the Old West, right, and only having seen depictions in film and history books, it's really hard for me to know if they were historically accurate or not. I don't have an eye like Cole does, whether it comes to certain things along those lines. I just have to trust that the writer-director did their due diligence in making this seem correct. I do have a small bit of background in some Native American history, mostly because of my time with the Boy Scouts. We did a lot of work with Native American culture and ceremonies, and I was honored enough to be able to be a ceremonialist in some of those things. So I was able to wear some of the regalia and do some of the dances and learn some of the things about the history of the people. And I think that aspect of this, from a historical aspect, was really fascinating. And it was cool to see, for me, kind of a practical application of some of those things and how it played into history, especially seeing the ghost dance and, a little bit of the history between that and Sitting Bull himself. And I mean, the Sioux as a nation is, a very, very important part of the history of America. So from that perspective, I think they did a really great job of setting that up. Now, as far as the realism of what that reservation might have looked like, or the soldiers' interactions, I think that probably was a realistic depiction. There was extreme racism back then, right? As far as anybody who was considered a lover of the natives were probably considered totally frowned on, as we saw.
Racism so bad that they wouldn't even know it's being racist.
Right, exactly. It's just truly just like, and honestly, and they set that up too, as far as like the fear aspect of the, like, this is the bad things that the Native Americans have done, this is the bad things that the white folks have done, and they didn't shy away from any of that. So, as how well it was executed and how well it was memorable, that's not really for debate, but they definitely tried a pretty good job of setting up the history. And when you say it's based on a true story, you need to at least have that backbone and that entire infrastructure, and for the most part, I think they did a good job.
Well, speaking off that, after she gets off the train, Colonel Silas Grove then introduces Catherine to a man who spits in her face and tells her that he hopes Native Americans fuck her and cut the baby out of her uterus, as that's what Native Americans did to other white women. Kelly, after you saw the scene, what did you think we were in for with this movie?
I just felt like she was just going to be victimized for the whole entire movie for whatever choice she made. And I kind of thought that might happen anyways, but then it, like, just, it's as in your face as a big phlegmy bout of spit. So
right.
it is.
That caught me off guard completely.
Yeah,
like, they did a really good job of jump scare / just, oh my God, that just happened.
But I said to Eric when we were watching it, was like, how did he have that prepared so fast?
My blood boils. My blood.
Yeah, and she, like, very much is just a turn the other cheek person, because nothing's going to be better for her if she, like, made a big fuss of it. And that becomes kind of true later. She's just a very much like, all right, moving on. Anyways, She doesn't really seem that surprised, but it doesn't stop her from doing what she ends up doing, so...
You would think that would be like the catalyst to be like, oh, well, if that's the first interaction I have, I probably should rethink this whole thing.
Maybe I will go home.
Nope.
Yeah. I feel like this film is like, it's a very Hollywood portrayal of, a woman who is recently, like, freed in a time where, women weren't very free, and she naively goes to a new place and then immediately, gets shunned by people. And I just feel like I've seen that in Hollywood and Hollywood films a lot. And I don't know, when I think of the historicity of this film, I already know that other parts of this aren't historically accurate. So, like, of course, I think that part is historically accurate, but then there's other parts, like her character specifically, where I really question how well they did the historicity of her character. So, yeah, I never read anything about her getting off a train and getting spit on too. So it feels like they just added that to portray the racism of the time. But like, I just think the writer director took some liberties there. But it is what it is, I guess. But
just foreshadowing.
Speaking of the writer director, Eric.
Yeah.
Did you in your research see? I think it's the same writer director for Locke. Am I correct in that?
Stephen Knight is the writer of Locke, I believe.
Not the director, but the writer of Locke.
Yeah. Well, I don't think she directed. She did not direct Locke. Stephen Knight directed it though. Directed Locke.
I just knew there was a throughway between Locke and.
It's an interesting comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote this film, then wrote and directed Locke. So.
I don't really see any comparisons between the two whatsoever, or even in the writing or anything else. But it is an A24 film, so it's might as well worth mentioning.
For sure. All right, well, we also meet a man by the name of James McLaughlin, who's the U.S. Indian agent in the Dakotas, and he's portrayed by Kieran Hines, and he is married to a Native American woman. And we also meet Chaska, who we think serves as a spy of the Lakota tribe, but is really a spy for the Lakota tribe. And Chaska then introduces Catherine to Chief Sitting Bull. He is our famous character of history. If you've done, just a little cursory research of Native American history from the 19th century, you probably know of him or know his name. So he was a famous and true character in history due to the Battle of Little Bighorn that successfully defended the Standing Rock Indian Reservation against American colonizers. And also, if you've been around the news the last 10 years, you probably have heard of the name Standing Rock. And at the time Catherine meets him, he has somewhat given up on fighting the colonizers of the Dakotas and calls himself a potato farmer. So, Kelly, what did you think of Chief Sitting Bull when we first met him?
I think Chief Sitting Bull is played by a actor who's like way too young for the role. And it really took me off from the believability, because it's just kind of a handsome man is playing him when I think he should be. I mean, this is like right before his death, and he lived to 60, I think. So that should have been an older man, definitely. So that was kind of hard to get past. But I did like how we were introduced to him. I didn't like how his like movement from cold to warm all kind of happened off screen. It was one scene he behaves one way, and the next scene he behaves a different way. We kind of missed any kind of like development of their relationship like happening organically. It just kind of like happens suddenly when she decides whatever many $1,000s she's going to give him. But I liked that dialogue exchange as well, is how much are you going to pay me? It was like, okay. Parts that I liked, parts that I didn't, but the biggest standout to me was the actor who portrayed him. And no harm to the fact of
Michael
his acting
Greyeyes,
job, but it just, if you're going to portray a real historical figure, I think we all know you should probably cast someone who looks more the role, in this case, with age.
And yeah, like when I saw portraits of him at that time, and like there's photographs of him at that time. He is older, he's wrinkled, and he does look a little down and beaten. Kevin, what did you think of Chief Sitting Bull when we first met him?
Yeah, so to Kelly's point, I saw an interview with Susanna White, the director of this film, and she says that she only considered Michael Greyeyes as the only person who could play Sitting Bull. It didn't matter anything else, which is now obvious when we talk about how lacking they pulled it, like the age scenario. And that also leads to my general complaint about the film shoehorning the whole love story in there, which we can either talk about now or later. Doesn't really matter.
You can talk about now if you want. Yeah.
So my major complaint with this film is that they made this what felt like a non-organic love story that did not necessarily need to be there in order to push the story of trying to protect the rights of the Native Americans or trying to, show a historical depiction of who Sitting Bull was. I don't think it was necessary to have them randomly fall in love off screen, even like Kelly had mentioned. You could have dialogue and interaction between those two without having a sexual chemistry or even any sort of chemistry whatsoever. You can have the fact that one's a super famous war chief, and the other one is a widowed white woman. Like, there didn't need to have the romantic element whatsoever in order to make that relationship intriguing or interesting. And the fact that that's what they did seems like they were only picking Michael Greyeyes because he's a good-looking gentleman, and that he was going to have his sex appeal because we're going to take Sitting Bull's shirt off 4 or 5 times in this and look at his bullet wounds. And like, it just didn't seem organic from a historical aspect. It felt way too Hollywoodized. I think, Eric, you had mentioned that earlier as well. And nothing against Michael Greyeyes' performance. He was fantastic. I think he's a very good actor in general. But it just, there wasn't anything for me to latch onto. Even when he was doing his big face turn and turning into the political activist that he was supposed to be, it just felt rushed and nothing really memorable. You know, it makes me just question why they even decided to write this story to begin with. It's like when you put on paper, what are you watching a movie about? Oh, I'm watching about a lady portrait person going out to paint Sitting Bull. Okay, well, what else? What else do you do with that story? Well, they figured making a love story was really the only thing you could do, because they weren't going to show the Battle of Wounded Knee, right? Is that the massacre afterwards? They weren't going to show that, right? So they didn't have any.
It wasn't a battle. It was just a massacre.
Right? I guess they call it that because
sometimes they call it that. Yep.
Well, yeah, that's another whole other thing. A whole other thing. There were medals given away, and they don't take them back, and it's a whole another scar on American history. But I guess my point in all of this is that they had to make it compelling somehow. I don't like the way that they did it, and it just kind of takes away from the whole film from me, top to bottom.
For sure. Well, we eventually learn that Chief Sitting Bull was once a great uniter of the Native American tribes, as you know we've been talking about. In real life, he was too. But since he's given up on fighting the colonizers, many Native Americans have joined together to do the ghost dance, which was said to reunite the living with spirits of the dead, bring the spirits to fight on their behalf, and end American westward expansion. It's said that Native Americans are so dedicated to this dance that they will do it until they pass out. So, Kelly, what did you think of this film's portrayal of the ghost dance movement?
I think that part was pretty cool. It was a learning thing for me. I had never heard of the ghost dance. And for it to be this, it is an act of desperation to dance until you pass out. And that just kind of shows you what dire stakes that they're in. They can't fight back. They get massacred. They can't keep losing their land. They can't eat potatoes forever or like whatever else they're given. Their rations keep getting cut down. Like there's no other options. So it makes sense that they would try to turn to their ancestors and bring back buffalo herds. I really liked everything we learned about the buffalo herds. And it is like this, like, it is like a beautiful portrayal, I think. I think they did a really good job with that. I liked the amount of people we saw. I liked the way they lighted those scenes. It looked like the Carlin paintings. It is Carlin, right? Catlin. It looked like a Catlin painting, the way that they would show them, because they would do a really wide shot to show as many bodies as possible. And I think that was pretty cool. So I appreciated that aspect of it. I think that that's one of the strengths of this movie is when they do lean into those parts of it.
Yeah. I mean, so we talked about slow frame rates in How to Talk to Girls at Parties, and they definitely did that with this film too. And it just annoys me, as Cole said in How to Talk to Girls at Parties, gives me a headache when we see those slow frame rate scenes.
Oh yeah, and so they didn't utilize it.
My big complaint with those scenes.
They didn't utilize it the first time we saw the ghost dance. They do it the second time when Sitting Bull's watching. And they didn't do any of them until like the third act of the movie. And then suddenly they're like, "Oh yeah, I forgot we had this option in the editing booth.
Like, real quick.
Like let's make people look disoriented and scared. I forgot about this." Like, and then they were kind of heavy-handed with it, and it comes out of nowhere, and then it kind of cheapens any emotional impact that they were trying to build, because they're like force feeding it to you.
Mm-hmm. Kevin, what do you think of the ghost dance?
I wanted more. So historically, the ghost dance is actually a pretty big part of this whole thing. So the U.S. government in general saw the ghost dance as basically a form of protest, as a form of saying, we are not going to sign your treaties. We're not going to be okay with you treating us the way you are. And they were scared. And the movie kind of talks about this a little bit when they talk about hey, when they see dancing, white folk get scared. Like there was some dialogue in relation to that. And even when they were arresting Sitting Bull and telling him whatever he was accused of, like the incitement of the ghost dance. And that's truly historically what Sitting Bull was arrested for, or what they were worried that he was going to do, because the ghost dance was almost like a religion in the way that people were using it as this big movement, so to speak. So the U.S. government was concerned that Sitting Bull was going to continue to push people towards this idea. And it wasn't so much the idea of the physical dance, but that the dance represented that these people were not listening to the U.S. government. They were not okay with the fact that they were being sold off, or not sold off, but their land was being sold off. They were putting into smaller reservations. They weren't okay with their way of life just disappearing. And that's what the U.S. government plan was. It was basically, deal with it. You're going to turn into the white folk, or you're just going to die, and that's just the reality of it. And that's historically what happened. So if from this film, I think they needed to do more to really show that this dance was kind of like the protest, the big thing that was supposed to, they kind of danced around it, but they didn't do a good enough job of forcing that home. And for me, that's, and I get a little bit more as I did some research after the fact and thinking about it, like, oh, that's why it wasn't as impactful during the time for me. So that's my little 2 cents on the ghost dance.
For sure. And yeah, at this time, Sitting Bull was killed in, spoiler, you've seen this film probably. He was killed in 1890.
No, he's still alive today.
North and South Dakota became a state in 1889. Let me double check South Dakota statehood. Sorry. Yeah, 1889. But from 1883 to 1978, the United States government actually made it illegal for Native Americans to practice their religions and cultures, because they basically were scared that they'd use them for uprising, like it was a form of protest. And it literally wasn't until 1978 that Native Americans could practice these things like the ghost dance or Sundance ceremonies, feasts, and even sweat lodges. Like you see sweat lodges all over the West now. That was illegal until 1978. It was also legal to sage your home if you were a Native American. And, that's such a big thing today, saging your home if you think ghosts are in there. That was literally illegal until 1978 because the United States thought that this was a form of protest against the government. So, yeah, like literally this was illegal at the time, and this was, I guess, pissing a lot of people off. And this goes into kind of like the goal of Colonel Silas Grove. He's the guy that Sam Rockwell portrayed, and it's to get Native Americans to sign a land allotment act to essentially cut their lands in half. And to do this, he cuts the rations of the Lakota tribe in half, which was also a true thing. Basically, like, the government started murdering, they started murdering a lot of the buffalo in the Great Prairies so that Native Americans had nothing to eat, essentially. And this was, a common practice of colonizers at the time, and they essentially cornered Native Americans, made them live in certain territories at threat of war, and they started cutting their rations to starve them, to make them basically sign these treaties to give up more of their land. And in defense against this, Catherine goes into town and buys tons of flour and food for the Native Americans, which then leads to a scene of a local townie beating her up. And there's more really horrible things that happen in the scene. But Kelly, what did you think of this scene and the addition of it to the film? Also, like, considering that I don't think I read anything that this actually happened in real life, too.
Yeah, well, I could see it happening, and I could see it not being reported in the newspaper, because who writes it? The same people that witnessed it happen. I think the only thing more shocking than the assault itself, and other than the piss in the mud wiped on her face, which is a crazy move.
Graphic.
Yeah, the only thing more shocking than that is when she looks up and the whole town's just staring at her. And they're totally okay with it happening. That was doubly shocking, because it's not the act of one, it's what everybody wants to happen to her, and that's really brutal to see. That's like, what's crazy is it is like this like shocking act of violence against her, and what struck me more is the fact that everyone's just like, yep. Except for one woman who just says, you need to get out of here. But even she, like...
Well, they're gathering rope, she said.
Yep,
yeah.
Which is pretty crazy, too. I did like how afterwards she shows up to that dinner party with her face all beaten and battered. I think that is like a good move on her part. I'm surprised no one at the dinner party assumed that Sitting Bull did it to her or accused that of happening, given what they've done. But it seems like they kind of know.
They already accused her of doing other things with Sitting Bull.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
But they seem to already have a clue about what actually happened to her. So all of that, I think, even if it isn't proven to be real, I could 100% see it being real. And I'm glad that they included that, because it really moves the story along, and it shows like the only acts of violence that were shown in this movie is from the side of the oppressor. We hear about it from both sides, but that's really like the only like big action scene also is just a woman being beat up, which is pretty crazy also. But I think, well, I know that I'm glad that that was included, because if without it, it's just like, it's talking about a lot of the brutality that happened, but it doesn't show any of it. And like, you're literally making a movie. It's time to show some stuff. So it was good to include.
Yeah. Kevin, what did you think of that kind of brutal scene?
Surprising. Wow, it wasn't necessary. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. The first punch, I think, got the point across, but then they really kept going, and it got harder to watch, and it didn't really feel like I was gaining any more impact on it other than like, okay, you can stop now. Like, I don't know. Maybe that was just me being sensitive to the actual act of it, but it just, you could have gotten that point across without, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Because at the same time, you wanted to show that they were trying to kill her, essentially. Like, they were about to string her up right afterwards. It wasn't like, I'm just trying to teach you a lesson. It was like, I'm trying to hurt you. I'm trying to kill you. And they did a pretty good job of actually doing that. So I'm going to take that back, I think, a little bit. It probably was necessary. It was hard to watch, put it that way. Definitely was not expecting it. And they sold it really well. I mean, I guess the acting choreography, the fight coordinating, like, it was pretty intense from start to finish. They did a good job of making you feel like this is real and happening. I also really kind of liked the way with the rock to the head, how it came out of absolute nowhere as she was kind of walking in the street, and all of a sudden the ping and the all the things that happen when you get struck in the head with a foreign object and start bleeding, and the whole scene started kind of out of nowhere, even though you knew she was in danger. So that was kind of a thing too. It was like you were waiting for it to happen, and then it all did happen exactly the way your brain kind of was said it was going to. So yeah, there was parts of this movie that I did not really enjoy, but this particular scene was meaningful enough, and it was impactful that because the whole third scene, right, the whole third act of this entire movie is launched off of this assault. And so it's really poignant, important that they get it right, in the sense that it has to jettison her off to her next move, her next big thing, which is then to obviously go and double down on her efforts and try to rouse Sitting Bull and all of those things. So I would say overall the scene did a pretty good job for me.
Yeah. Yeah, so the interesting thing about historical films, I feel a lot of the time, the screenwriters will take several characters and put them into one, and that's like a way to just speed up the film. Like, I think Social Network did that, like Aaron Sorkin does that a lot, and sometimes people complain about it, sometimes people say it's just like a very effective way to portray history. And so I do think that, like, that scene was just kind of a amalgamation of all of the brutality and horrible things that were happening at the time, of white people that were trying to help out Native Americans. At the same time, I do kind of agree. It just, like, the initial punching of her, I was already just like, oh shit, like, and then they took it the step further, and I was kind of like, did they really need to go that far? But, I do think it leads us into the third act and, like, gives Caroline impetus for everything she does. And I think it's supposed to serve as, like, every time in a film, like, we kind of get this naive, like, female lead character, we get a hardening of her too, like, where there's, like, a point where she gets introduced, like, to male brutality, and that hardens her and gives her kind of an impetus to, like, take up a cause. Would you agree with that, Kelly? Or,
Yeah,
I mean, like,
I
do you think this is kind of like a Hollywood kind of version of it? Or
Yeah, I think that is typical. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's kind of what I felt from it. And, it almost felt like the brutality was a little unnecessary, but I get the initial like idea of it too, though. So that's fair each way. But around this time, we also meet General Crook, portrayed by Bill Camp, who's he's one of my favorite actors. He does a lot of like he portrays policemen and detectives a lot. I think A Night Of, he was in that the HBO miniseries. He's great in that. But he wants Sitting Bull to to stage an uprising just so he can seek revenge for the Battle of Little Bighorn, and he wants to slaughter more Native Americans and take their land. And General Crook essentially serves as our big villain for the film, outside of James McLaughlin. Like, James McLaughlin seems like the in-between between the two, but I think General Crook's our big villain. But Kevin, what did you think of Bill Camp's portrayal of General Crook?
Yeah, I thought it was really well done, actually. The callous feeling, just, I don't give a shit. I'm here to, mess things up. But he also had a kind of charismatic way about him. I thought it was also interesting how he did a really good job with a poker face, kind of holding his hand. If like his intention really was to let Sitting Bull and the rest of the folks all vote against the allotment just in order to allow something like Wounded Knee to happen, then hell, great job. Like, you did a fantastic job of making it seem like, no, let democracy happen. It's fine. Like, while knowing there might be a hidden agenda, you didn't really know what it might have been at the time. The scene with him shooting the quails as Sam Rockwell's character comes up and is like, we have a problem. He was just so nonchalant about it, continuing to just go about his business. Thought that was a pretty cool scene. Without getting a ton of screen time, he was effective, and he commanded the time that he had. I mean, it wasn't a tour de force by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that if you are forced to be in a role where you have to play a historically bad guy, I think he did a good job.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, what do you think of General Crook as our big bad, as you like to say?
I'm with Kevin on it. I like that he held his cards for so long. It almost seemed like he was trying to protect Sitting Bull for a little bit there because we didn't know what his actual intention was, but we do know he showed up with a whole army. And then he was just like happy to sit back and watch things happen. So it was a nice portrayal of someone just kind of like sitting back and watching things happen because he has a bigger plan and all of these little pawns just need to move before he can set his bigger plays into motion. And he's the only one who's so okay with the vote going the way it was because we find out why he feels that way. I think that was a pretty good reveal.
I like the portrayal of politics at the time, like how James McLaughlin was kind of this in-between between him and General Crook just literally wants to murder all of them. And James McLaughlin he wants to be like the in-between of the American government getting more land, but not murdering all of the Native Americans.
Can we talk about James McLaughlin a little bit?
Sure, yeah.
I don't know I know it was intentional with the redemption arc or the attempted redemption arc of saving. And I don't know if you want to save this for when we get to that scene. But for me, it was interesting to go from being introduced to him a certain way and then the final scenes being way you feel a different way about him. I don't know, is that Hollywood? Is that the way that his character might have been in real life? Are you supposed to feel sympathetic for someone who ordered the death of a bunch of women and children who then can't sleep anymore because of it? Is that moral arc something that we're really supposed to play into? You mentioned it earlier, he's supposed to be this bad guy, and he's kind of a bad guy, but he's also kind of not, because he talks about meeting her in New York and he seems genuine. It's just, I don't know where they were going with this, and maybe they were going a certain way and it was supposed to be ambiguous and vague, and maybe he was supposed to be the maybe white light shining hope, but it didn't come across that way. I don't know. What do you guys want to think about Mr. McLaughlin?
I do think that they tried to redeem him or give him a sympathetic story during that final scene of him in the cabin. But the thing is, if you do feel bad for what you've done, why are you still doing it? Why don't you abandon this role that you've gotten yourself to and go be a potato farmer, for example? The fact that he's still doing it makes it that I can't believe a word that he says, and it's clear that he'll say whatever he needs to say for things to get done. And the fact that, what even is his job? He spends the whole time trying to spy on our main woman and Sitting Bull. I guess his job is to keep an eye on Sitting Bull, but you don't feel bad, or you wouldn't still do it. Like, not really. So, I didn't like him in the end, but the fact that Sam Rockwell was speaking another language quite confidently as that character made me put another feather in the hat of Mr. Rockwell.
I watched an interview with Sam Rockwell, and he talks about this. And Sam Rockwell talked about how intimidated he was. He had no idea that he was going to be. He just wanted to play a cowboy. He only took the role because he wanted to be a cowboy. And then all of a sudden, he gets asked to do a whole bunch of absolute, genuine Lakota dialogue, and he's like, oh, crap. So one night he goes to Michael Greyeyes, and he's basically like, I'm in over my head. I don't know what to do. You got to help me out. And he walks him through the whole process, and they've kind of gathered their wits, and that scene is delivered as such because he, has that moment of, holy crap, I don't know if I can do this, and then finds out, he did a great job. I thought that scene was powerful, and it only is done that way if they get the dialogue just smack on.
Yeah. I think, so in real life, he is a Canadian-American United States Indian agent, or Native American, government agent. And I think his whole purpose, in real life and in this film, is to get them to sign the Land Allotment Act and to try to get more territory for the United States. And yeah, I feel like when I watch the ending of his character, I don't exactly feel he was he had a redemption arc either, though. I feel like he's still a shitty guy, but he's just trying to do. He's not trying to order genocide, but General Crooks wants to, or no, just Crook. One Crook. General Crook.
One Crook.
Actually wants to kill everybody. But it's an interesting in-between of the two. And they are trying to portray the time. I don't think they do it historically accurately. But at least in this case, I think that between General Crook, James McLaughlin, and Catherine Weldon, their goals of that time were actually portrayed accurately in this film.
I thought that he was a colonel and that the other guy was the agent.
I
don't think so. Just says he was a Indian service. So
I think the whole thing, he was technically an agent.
Okay.
Colonel Silas Grove. Okay, he's supposed to. You're right. I'm messing this up. Sorry. James McLaughlin was the agent, and then Sam Rockwell was the Colonel Silas Grove, who was trying to be the agent of the government in between the government and General Crook. Yeah. Okay.
No, the redemption arc for me is mostly that he came in and saved Catherine Weldon's life, right? He comes in and says, if you don't leave, they're going to kill her, so you need to get her out. And then she captures or kidnaps her and returns her safely. And,
Yeah.
He's responsible for her life. But yes, I agree, he's still a dick.
Returns her safely by taking her to an isolated area in the woods with only him around.
Which
and then
she
letting
turns
her
around
run
and starts,
off into the
dude, I thought she was going to make it all the way back again. I'm like, no way. You're not doing it. You got on a horse and dropped her off and she's able to run back to Sitting Bull in time.
I thought she
enough
would
to be
too.
in earshot. It's a Cole moment. If he was here, he would absolutely lose his mind on that scene.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about it a little bit at the start, but I do want to talk a little bit more about the relationship between Sitting Bull and Catherine Weldon, specifically the painting scenes. I feel they were trying to do a very intimate thing here, and they were Catherine Weldon was a Brooklyn person, she was not born, but she lived in Brooklyn for so long, a city person, and she came out and finally saw the prairies and saw Sitting Bull, and I think her mind was kind of opened. And I think Sitting Bull was the person that showed her that. And I actually think that part, at least, is historically accurate. But, Kelly, what did you think of this kind of relationship between Caroline and Sitting Bull, and also the painting scenes, too?
Well, like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I like the intimacy that a painter brings to the other character, the subject of their painting. And so I like that happening. But in general, they coded it with this sheet of romance instead of what could be just a professional relationship or one that becomes more personal and intertwined. But because it's sheeted in this code of romance, it'd be one thing if it was just rumors. And I don't doubt that that would be a obstacle that they'd have to come across because of just sharing private time doing portraiture, but there's also no reason that they had to be isolated. They chose to do that. So I don't know. I didn't have strong feelings of it because the romance lens, like, kind of wrecked those scenes for me, honestly. It just felt like they were trying to do more than just showing, like, painting. And that goes to show us, too, because if that's, like, the whole purpose of her trip out there, we see the painting for, like, 20 seconds, maybe less, and then it's done. And so I wish that, I mean, we took more time to make that, like, a reverent moment in the movie. I feel like more time should have been spent on that, more dialogue about it. It was just like, it made the whole fact that she was a painter feel like unnecessary to the story, and without that, none of this even occurs. So it felt like almost like an abandoned storyline for the sake of shoehorning in another that didn't even really work for me.
Kevin, what did you think about the painting scenes and their relationship?
Yeah, I think the painting scenes go hand in hand with my complaint that with the relationship, that the romantic side of it, there was the weird flirtatious, I want to paint inside, but I want you to go outside, and I'm going to let you walk ahead and behind, and that's the whole point of the theme of the title of the movie. And I know that you asked me about the painting scenes, but like there was just unnecessary flirtation in those scenes that I think that were necessary. I just said that, unnecessary. And they were very, very evident in those painting scenes. I did guess they appreciate the wide-angled shots when Sam Rockwell's character was spying on them and the eagle flew across.
I like the eagles telling him. That was kind of cool.
Telling you. I thought that was pretty sweet. And he just looked up, was like, hey. So I thought that was pretty sweet. But outside of that, it didn't even look like the famous Sitting Bull painting, I don't think. Like, going back, unless I totally missed it, you'd think they would make it, because there's only like two, I think, actual historic Sitting Bull paintings that came out of that time period. And I'm pretty sure it doesn't look like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
and just talent aside, she'd be a way better sketch artist than she seemed to be a portraiteur? Yeah. Portrait artist. When she was sketching those horses, I was like, oh, whoa, she really is an artist. That's incredible. And then when you see the final portrait, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, and when you look at the actual Sitting Bull portraits, too, it's just so insane how much older he actually was compared to what they decided to do with Michael Greyeyes. So, yeah, and it's super obvious now. It wasn't as obvious in the time because I didn't, like, have a picture of Sitting Bull in my mind as I was watching it. But now thinking back on it, it's like, turn this into a romance novel.
Yeah, and even if, like, we pretend we don't know what Sitting Bull actually looks like, the fact that like everything that's described just in the confines of that movie tells me that this needs to be an older man, not a man who still looks very much in his prime and ready to go to war.
Yeah, especially if his peers in the Indian chief
are revering
world
him.
are super old and like really are ancient.
Yeah.
And then it's like, wait, why is he's the one that you respect? Yeah.
And when he sits with the tribe elders and he looks like their grandson. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was 58 to 59 when he died. Like, it's not sure when he was actually born, but he was in his late 50s when he died, so he was definitely older at this time. And, yeah, the actor looked like he was maybe in his mid-30s at most, I would think.
Yeah,
but,
if that man is approaching 60, good for him, but...
Yeah.
Fantastic.
You don't look it at all.
For sure. All right, well, let's close out the film. So, basically... After many conversations between Catherine and Sitting Bull rallies the Native Americans to vote against the Land Allotment Act, and this is a big, like, emotional scene of solidarity. And now, let's talk about the death of Sitting Bull, which I'll start out by saying is extremely historically inaccurate. For one, Catherine Weldon was not around at the time of Sitting Bull's death. She had already left the Dakotas for Kansas City, Missouri, because she was so angered at Sitting Bull's acceptance of the Ghost Dance movement. And also, Sitting Bull was not peacefully murdered by an Indian Affairs agent. He fought to his death and was murdered by an Indian agency policeman named Bullhead. Kelly, what did you think about the portrayal of Sitting Bull's death?
Yeah, I thought it was really unfortunate. I want him to go down, like a warrior, because he was getting that fire back in him. But it was Rico's time to shine. We know that he dances when he hears a gunshot. And I waited.
Rico, who's Rico again?
Oh, Rico the circus horse.
Oh, yeah, Rico the circus horse.
Yeah.
I remember him.
Of course,
Yeah.
Rico the circus horse.
He does two things. He scratches the ground when you whistle, and he dances when a bullet is shot. from the moment I heard that, I waited the rest of the movie for a bullet to go off around Rico. And when does it happen?
At Sitting Bull's death. That's when it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, and at that point, I think it's in the back of everyone's mind that we're told that Rico's going to do that. Not mine, though. I was like, oh my god, Rico's right there. Here we go. And they showed him dancing, and they did it while they're playing sad music, and Catherine's screaming, and Rico's dancing. And he's trotting sideways like you've never seen a horse do before. And that was crazy to include. The way that they did and the way that they clipped that all together. It was, what did you want us to feel? Because that was ridiculous.
Yes!
But it was Rico's moment to shine, and I'm really happy for him. So congrats, Rico.
Kevin, what did you think about that
what
portrayal?
were we supposed to feel in the grandest moment of the film where the portrayal died, and all of a sudden this horse is like literally like cross-stepping his way across the screen back and forth, like Kelly said, like I've never seen an animal do before. Like, what was this? You were supposed to remember that one conversation in 45 minutes to an hour earlier in the film and be like, oh, that was it. There's the dance.
Is the callback.
Totally inappropriate. Didn't make any sense. They were trying to go for this big grand nature and man are connected, and when the man goes down, the horse reacts in a way. It's just, awful.
And even so I guess Rico is a real horse. That is a real thing.
Oh!
Surprise. Otherwise, if they included that for zero reason, that's even funnier. But if they're going to show him dancing, and maybe Rico only has so many tricks up his sleeve, but they could have shown like a more, I don't know how many dance moves horses have either, but the silliest option is sidestepping from left to right of the screen. And one that
and
might
then doing
be,
it again.
and then doing it again, but a more like
so
majestic
derpy. That's
thing
what I
too.
thought. It's just so derpy.
If you're gonna show them like dance, I'm sure horses can like rear up on their hind legs and like kick their front feet and look, and that could be considered a dance. But it would also look really majestic, really powerful, and like all of these kind of moves. So they had options to include the fact that there's a dancing horse.
When you say Rico's real, are you saying like Sitting Bull's horse was really named Rico and he really was from a circus?
I need to look it up again. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, so he might have had a horse named Rico. I didn't read anything
So
about
he was
that,
gifted
but,
a horse from, I believe,
Okay.
Crazy Horse, like he said, which did come from the circus and had tricks and was present at his death.
Okay, so all those things
And
are real.
apparently danced, and I
All
think
right,
that
so that's
became
the
like
reason
a
they did
story
it.
in history.
Okay, all right.
But they could have depicted it in a way that wasn't so hilarious.
I bet he could throw a ball over them mountains over there. You know?
Them mountains.
But yeah, no, oh my gosh, like just it looked like, okay, Kevin, remember like my freshman year of college, I took a digital cinemas class,
Yeah.
and I basically just made a bunch of stupid films with my friends. It just
Yes,
looked like
I do actually.
it looked like something I would have done in my digital cinemas class in freshman year of college. Just, let's have a little cutaway scene. We have this interesting horse dancing over here, and it also the slower frame rate of the whole assassination scene. Again, we talked about slower frame rates and how to talk to girls at parties. It's just like it ruins the whole film for me. It looks like amateur filmmaking. I don't understand the idea of doing it. Like, in the 70s and 80s, they did it because I feel like their cameras were not as high quality, and so they couldn't get very good pixel quality of everything they were shooting, and so they slowed the frame rate down to try to get better, like, maybe better pixel quality so that people could see what was going on. But using it nowadays does not add any artistic merit to the film, so that just... having the whole slow frame rate of Sitting Bull getting killed, and then the slow frame rate of Rico dancing, I was so confused. Kelly?
I was fact-checking the fact where Rico came from. It wasn't from Crazy Horse. It was from Sitting Bull.
Okay.
It wasn't from Sitting Bull. It was from Buffalo Bill to Sitting Bull.
Buffalo Bill.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. But then I'm reading another thing from the BBC that says that Sitting Bull was assassinated outside of his cabin by Indian Agency police.
Oh, he was, yeah. No, he definitely was. I was just saying Caroline Weldon was not there. And then also he was not... He fought against them. Like, he tried to shoot back at them and kill them.
Okay.
He did not just peacefully get shot off his horse, which is what, like, the film portrays. is that he was just kind of peacefully shot off his horse, which is not the case whatsoever.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Buffalo Bill had a circus, and that's where
Yeah.
Rico originally came from.
Oh
And
my
Sitting Bull
gosh.
was in the circus for a while, too.
Yeah. Yeah, and okay, I'm reading, like, his death. A close quarters fight erupted, and within minutes, several men were dead. The Lakota killed 6 policemen immediately. So the Lakota tribe that were actually around Sitting Bull actually killed 6 policemen, and 2 more died shortly after the fight, including Bullhead, the guy that actually shot Sitting Bull. And so, like, there was, like, a whole, like, skirmish between the Lakota and the policemen of that time, and, like, there was people killing each other. Instead, they just portray Sitting Bull getting up on this horse and getting shot. And I just feel like that does a huge disservice to his personality. Like, he was a fighter. He fought till his very death, and
Yeah.
he fought against colonizers until his very last breath. And they just kind of show him getting up on this horse and, like, accepting his death. And I wouldn't say it was meek, but, like,
Yeah.
it wasn't true to his personality.
It felt like I had said earlier, it felt like the movie makers are, like, avoiding any kind of violence coming from Sitting Bull himself or from the Lakota tribe. And I understand maybe why they don't want to show that, but to show, even at the end, a death like that, it's just not real. That's not how things happened. So if you're trying to be, like, sensitive by removing historical facts, then you're not really doing a service to anyone.
And even inside the scope of the movie, who are you supposed to believe killed him in that moment? It looked like a Native American person, did it not?
Yeah.
And no, it was in real life. It was a Native American person who was, and he was a U.S. Indian agent. So,
All right.
yeah.
I don't know. Just it didn't seem like they did a good job of explaining why it happened the way that it did, with the sniper and all that nonsense.
Indian agency policeman is what Bullhead was, who was the guy who actually shot Sitting Bull. But
Also,
either way.
sorry, my other favorite character. So we've talked about Rico at length, but I like Shell King. We see Shell King one time when it looks like he's coming in to assassinate,
Yeah.
and then we see him a second time when he passes out in the ghost dance. Mm-hmm. I could have used more Shell King.
Well, so, Kelly, as a person who loves Robert Eggers' films so much and how true they are to history, like, I mean, this is like the exact opposite of Robert Eggers, right?
I want to see Robert Eggers put this story together.
Yeah, this would be amazing if Robert Eggers did it. I want a true detail.
Can you imagine the ghost dance, too?
Yeah, it would be beautiful. Well, there you have it. That was Woman Walks Ahead. We're going to give our final ratings. And if you don't know how we do our final ratings, we basically give an A+ through F- 24, and that includes the letter E. Kevin has previously said that this is an illegitimate rating, and anybody who gives this should be kicked off the podcast, but we haven't been kicked off yet.
You need to find like the exact episode and timestamp that's my quote. I have said it's illegitimate, and I will
wasn't
never
the exact
give
quote.
one.
All right.
But I am not saying that anyone who would just you're skewing my words, sir.
Yeah. All right.
It'll happen
Kevin,
someday. Watch.
how about you go first? Give us an A through F for this
Sounds
bad
good.
boy of a film.
When you watch a film, you not immediately. You either know you like it or you don't like it pretty much right off the bat. And for me, this one was kind of, as I was going through it, it didn't take too long for me to go, okay, it's kind of meh. There wasn't a ton to it. I enjoyed the setups, the startup scene, some of the character introductions. I like a Western in general, so I'm going to give it just the benefit going into the film, knowing that it's a Western because of that already. So I knew that this film had meek reviews, mild reviews down the middle, mostly because when you Google it to find a streaming service, it inevitably gives you the Rotten Tomatoes and the IMDb score right at the top. So you kind of just have this perception of what it's going to be in your head, which is, if I could somehow find a way to get to those streaming services without seeing that, I think I'd be better off, to be honest with you. But that's another story for another time. The actual acting portrayals in this film were well done. I think that Sam Rockwell did a good job with his. I think that I'm totally blanking on her name. Our female lead,
Jessica Chastain.
did a very good job with her role as well. No real notes on that, but the story was just not compelling. It was not something that I'm going to remember outside of this conversation. When we're done talking about this movie, it's going to fall along the wayside of A24 films that are just not very A24. There's really nothing about this film that goes, wow, that's A24, other than the fact that they chose to write a film about a female portraitist who went to go paint Sitting Bull. That's an A24-esque streak in its own sense, that it's just not a story that would usually get written or turned into a film until somebody wanted to do something obscure like this. For all those reasons, and I guess let's talk about some of the good things. The cinematography was nice, right? There was some really pretty shots. They had some great capture of nature. There was some really cool shots with some lightning and the thunderstorms in the background and the rain and across the giant prairie, and the capture of the Dakotas was really well done, and they just kind of made me enjoy what I was seeing. So it wasn't like a slog when you watch a movie, you're like, oh, this is so slow and boring. It was at least pretty. The story was unique enough and it made me entertained, but it just wasn't memorable. There was nothing that went like, yay, I'm going to hold on to this forever or recommend it to my friends or anything like that. It's just a D24. That's what it is. It's a D as in dingo 24. There really wasn't anything great about it. I'm not recommending it to my friends and family. Watch it if you're doing the completionist track or if you love Sam Rockwell. Moving on.
All right. Kelly, how about you give your rating next?
Yeah, I also wanted to give the props to the landscape shots. It was cool to see some reverence for the prairies and some appreciation for how beautiful that they look. I really, really liked all of that aspect. I liked the mountains being described as having just piles of buffalo bones on top of them. These kind of things really added to the atmosphere. I even liked the scene where she kind of opens her eyes to the naive thoughts she had, where she's walking through the cemetery of fallen American soldiers. And they kind of show this cool long shot of all the little crosses, her in her, time-accurate dress and, an American flag in the sky, and then a really dark cloud hanging overhead that then kind of frames the whole shot and makes it look even wider. That shot I thought was, especially one of note. And if they're going to talk about this landscape painter that inspires her, then you should also show some really nice landscapes in the movie. So I'll give all of that props. I'll also give props to Sam Rockwell and Rico. But for the rest of it, I felt like this movie landed somewhere between a fan fiction about real historical events, which just feels really cheap. And I also had no moment in this movie that the best movies to me are ones where I kind of become so immersed that I forget that I'm watching a movie. I want it to feel like when I'm reading a book, but kind of brought to life, where I'm just kind of in it and I'm not thinking about that there's a whole bunch of people making choices to put a movie out. This movie never ever got there. The whole time I felt like I could almost see the production team just behind the veil, and that they were trying to make this really big Hollywood production that was going to go down in history as this amazing epic for the time of a story that's never been told before, and do some amazing things. It felt all really intentional that was the goal, and that cheapened the entire story to me. I couldn't ever banish that thought from my head when I was watching it, so that was really bothersome. I will agree, I never had a point where I was just oh, I'm so bored, turn it off. But I also never had a point where I was this is good. Never. And I never had a point where I was I'm going to show this person and recommend it to this person. And I never had a moment where I was this is why I like A24. That never occurred either. So while not far from the worst movie we've ever seen, I think I'm going to use the sacred letter, put it as a high E plus 24.
E plus.
Sacred letter. Oh God, this is gonna be a whole thing every
letter.
episode now. And Kevin doesn't do it.
This is
our
why
very first
I need
episode-
the E's, though.
Yeah, at our very first episode, I believe
I got it. I
at
gave
least
it
a
an
couple
E.
of us gave Charles Swan an E24.
Right.
And everybody was like, wait, what? We're not giving E's. And I was like, yeah, let's give E's. And that's how it became a thing.
And here we are, 60 whatever episodes later, and I still have yet to give out an
60?
E.
We're
It's a rare one. Well,
99
for
episodes
A24
later.
movies only.
A24 films, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically A24 films.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, otherwise, what is our actual episode right now?
This is 100.
Oh! All right, we weren't going to make a big deal of it, but at least we can.
Dance,
I didn't want to
Rico.
mention it because Cole's not
Dance,
here.
Rico, dance!
Dance for 100, Rico.
Yeah.
We'll celebrate when Cole's back. But either way, still pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
Hey, Eric, what
As
did you
I've-
think of the movie?
Yeah. Hey, Eric, what's your review?
as I've said this whole podcast, I'm a little peeved at how historically inaccurate this movie is, and it's like I really like history, but I can forgive some historical inaccuracies if it's really to drive a point home or to like convey a huge theme of a movie or a time that the movie is trying to portray. But instead, this film takes all these really complex and interesting characters of this time, and they make them very Hollywoodized and bland and flat. And I would love like more nuanced portrayals of Caroline Weldon, James McLaughlin, Colonel Silas, and Sitting Bull. Like if we had these very nuanced portrayal of all of these characters and maybe took out some of the romantic aspects of Caroline Weldon and Sitting Bull, like I never read anything that was true, then I think this film could have been really good. And they had the actors to portray it too, like Jessica Chastain, great actor. Sam Rockwell, great actor. Michael Greyeyes, I even think did a good job in his portrayal of Sitting Bull. I just think that they were given a very poor script that wasn't true to the time, and also the cinematography and everything just kind of, it fell flat of what I would have liked to portray the Great Plains, and just how interesting and beautiful that they must have looked in the 1890s and 1880s. So, yeah, I think I'm with Kelly on this one. I'm going to give it an E24. Also, just to, say, what up, Kevin? I'm giving more E's to films.
What up?
But I'm giving it a flat E, even below Kelly,
Yeah.
an E24. And, yeah, like Charles Schwann got an E. I think this is along the lines of that, where it's just like Barely Lethal, Revenge of the Green Dragons, probably worst films I've seen from A24. This isn't one of the worst films, but
wait.
pretty
Probably?
bad though. Yeah.
Come on, we got to go back and rewatch Revenge of the Green Dragon just for that like slow-mo bullet shot. It's just
Yeah.
like...
What's funny is I would go back to that before some others.
We should do that, Eric. Let's do an episode
That's
where we
a-
revisit the worst ones we've ever reviewed.
That's at least one where it was like, it was entertaining for how bad it was.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, this really
there's
wasn't
some
that
films we watched that were just so boring, but like, you don't think it was entertaining for how bad it was?
No, this one particularly.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, this one was not even that. Yeah, that
wasn't-
one.
yeah, it
was
wasn't
so
bad.
It was.
Yeah.
It was funny to watch.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It was like a The Room kind of thing, like where it's so bad that like you're watching it and you're like, holy shit, this is bad, but this is funny. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Room, not Room.
Not
I
Room.
was like,
Not Room.
What?
The Room.
Remember how
With
bad
James
the room
Wazell.
is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Christ. All right.
Well, thank you for listening to us, everybody. And up next, we will be reviewing Requiem for a Dream. We thought that Darren Aronofsky, he directed The Whale. Why not, review some of his earlier films? And we landed upon Requiem for a Dream. Sadly, Cole will be off for that one, too, because he has some work conflicts. And either way, we love you. Thank you for listening. Please rate and subscribe. Have a good night, everybody.
A24.